Productive Pastor 82, planning your ministry year. What's going on, friends? Productive Pastor here with episode 82, how to plan your ministry year. Let me ask you this, you full of turkey yet? How was your Thanksgiving? Did you have a good time? I joked on Twitter earlier that people must really need to get out of funks because I had more downloads today that I'm recording than I had on the day that I released the episode, and I was laughing. Just want to check in on y'all. But it was the holidays. Nobody wants to listen about ministry productivity on Thanksgiving Day. You want to eat your food. But anyway, I got a good laugh out of that. But this episode, we're talking about the ministry year. We're going to share a walkthrough strategy of how you can plan that out. Well, what I want to tell you first is this. I am doing a workshop on December 11th. It's a Monday at 1 p.m. Central on this content, on how to plan out your year. We're going to do it as a group together. And so if you listen to this, you like this idea, and you say, Chad, I need to do this, head to the show notes, revchadbrooks.com/PPP/082, and sign up for this workshop. It'll be $25. I'll be talking about it in other places online. But we're going to go dig deep into the group accountability and the process behind this. And my goal is for you to walk out of that 2-hour session having a good schedule for your ministry year. So if this sounds attractive, this sounds interesting, make sure to sign up for that. Would love to see you coming and hanging out in that workshop. But let's just jump straight into the content because this kind of stuff matters and I love talking about it. And we need to talk about how you plan out your ministry year. So there's a mental model that I think about quite often. I think about it when I'm creating any sort of content. I think about it when I'm writing sermons, when I get to a tough squeeze point, anything like that. And I'm thinking through it today and how I want to teach this idea to you. And it's this: specific outcome plus tangible action equals transformation. Let me say it again. Specific outcome plus tangible action equals transformation. And just declaring those three things really helps when you are having to do any sort of planning or writing or communication, whatever. It's one of my favorite mental models to think through. So we're going to use that as we talk through planning out our ministry year. So the first one is this: the specific outcome. I want you to think about that. Like, what do you want next year to look like? Maybe you are tired of living in reactive mode or in urgent mode or in last minute mode. Perhaps that's a legitimate thing that you're on the struggle bus with, and you're saying, Chad, I want next year to not be so crazy. Maybe you're coming up on some big ministry transitions. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching with pastors who are going through transitions. It might be moving from a church to a church, or moving from full-time to bivocational, or moving from a local church position into a leadership position in their denomination. I do a lot of transition coaching, and you might be saying, this year I'm going to have some transition, and I want to think through it strategically. Like, that strategic leadership is one of the just core content principles, one of those pillars here at Productive Pastor. And so maybe your specific outcomes say, Chad, I want a much more strategic schedule because I've got some transition coming. Or maybe you're just saying, I want to have more time for what matters most. I want to have more time for the big things that are coming up in my church. I remember the year that I knew I was leading into a capital campaign. I had to think about that because I was going to occupy 6 months of focus. Or several years after that, we're actually doing a building that year, and it pretty much ran from January to November. It occupied so much of my time that year, and I had to really transition what ministry looked like that year. That was also the year of the pandemic, so that maybe I should have rethought some things. But what is your specific outcome? What do you want your year to look like? And think through and just jot down a handful of bullet points about that, because that's going to help you as you begin this planning process. So the next we move into the tangible actions. What are the things that you can do to make this specific outcome a reality? This is where so many other folks get bogged down. They're great at ideas of what they want. They might be good at the planning, but the implementation is the failure point that I see, personally in my own work, but then also in so many other people's. This is where things really, really matter. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a handful of sets of lists here. The first list I want you to make is, when are you taking time off? Now, this is a broad category, but I want you to go ahead and plan that time off from the very, very beginning. That's the first list you make. I want you to put your vacation time on there, and you might not have those exact dates in there yet, but you put the 2-week block down that you think you might want to take. Like, I've not scheduled mine yet, but I know we always take about 9 or 10 days of vacation in July. And so on my own list, that's sitting there right now. If you're United Methodist or another connectional type denomination, put your annual meeting. You're going to have to be gone for that. But also think about this. Think about how many Sundays do you want to be preaching? I'm preaching probably 48 to 49 Sundays a year right now, and I wish that could change, but it can't. And so what I know is coming up on my own planning for this year is I'm going to have to develop a better sort of a funnel for teaching people in my own local church, small rural church, part-time appointment, to be able to fill the pulpit so not just I can be gone, because it's not about me being gone, but I believe in a diversity of voices up there, and that's just a handy thing to encourage people's spiritual formation and that gift. Now, you also might want to schedule the conferences that you go to, or if you're going to try to take a study retreat once or several times throughout the year, block off everything that involves you being gone. Go ahead and spend as much time as you can writing down the list of those days and when that is. Now, here's the second list I want you to think about making. Or what are the community or church things that just have to happen? They seem to live there in your schedule. So think through holidays, big holidays in the church. Go ahead, grab Mother's Day, grab Father's Day, grab Easter. If you're part of a more liturgical tradition, Advent is a thing, Lent is a thing, Holy Week is a thing, all of that. And your church might have specific celebrations that are part of that you want to think through and get in there. And so, hit the Google up, make sure you get the dates down for that and put those dates in, write those dates in that list. The next thing is to think about what are the community events that seem to run the schedule of things. I know I have friends that pastor churches that are on marathon routes, and they know that on the Sunday of the marathon Sunday, everything's cattywampus, and you would hate to have Commitment Sunday for your stewardship campaign the same Sunday of Marathon Sunday. Or I worked in a church one time where the high school football team, and I shared about this in Productive Pastor Season 1 in the episode about the quarter, which I'm going to link to in the show notes anyway because it's a great episode. But in this town, our high school football team almost always made it into the finals for the state championship, which that game was 5 hours away. And our youth were also really they were a huge part of one of our favorite Advent celebrations that took up almost an entire week. We knew we had to schedule that Advent event after the high school playoffs because there was a really, really strong chance that almost all of our youth would be down there for that, and most of the adults as well. So think through what are those community things that, this is a time-bound event that has the ability to affect the church. So you're going to make that list. And the third list you're going to make is actually 3 more lists. But this is like a dumping ground. And if you've listened to podcasts for a while, you know about my idea of dumping ground and the strategy of dumping ground when it comes to planning and time management. I want you to make 3 dumping ground lists. The things that you need to do, the things that you have to do, and the things that you want to do. Now, those lists sound a little bit different, but the things you need to do, okay, you're going to have Christmas Eve. You're going to have a Good Friday service or something like that. It's just stuff that you need to do. Like, it's going to happen. It needs to be a priority. A vacation Bible school, like that sort of stuff. Like, these are the things that just are going to occur no matter what. Okay? So write those things down. Now, the things that you have to do. You might be in a situation where you're saying, our air conditioning unit is failing. We're going to have to do, we really, really need to do some sort of a specific financial campaign to get money to replace the air conditioner units. That's a have. The haves are the things that if your church does not do them, there will be there'll be consequences to it, and it's up to you to lead that or to keep that in front of people or to lead your leaders to be leading that. That's a have. Haves many times are things that just happen once every 3 to 5 to 10 years. but that's going on. You might be in a church, and I've been doing this a lot lately with people, especially in churches that have seen significant decline, and they need to grow for the sake of sustainability. And so I've been helping them design intentional growth campaigns and helping them lead those. You might be saying, Chad, we really need to do one of those this year. Well, two things. One, reach out to me, hit me back in the emails, and we can talk about that. But second, that sort of thing has to get scheduled out. That's a have to do. These are like mission critical things. If they do not happen, there's going to be negative consequences in ministry. And then there's the want to do. There might be a specific ministry or mission that you've been wanting to start. There might be a growing edge that you know you have the capacity and the resources to do. And you might be saying, Chad, 2024 is the year that we launch our food pantry, or that we level up our food pantry, or do this, or this is the year that we put in, those cool little community food boxes, that sort of thing. Those things that want to do, the things that you're excited about, the things that you know are going to take planning and take preparation, but it's not like there's not a stress, there's not a negative correlation or something that's this is part of that. And you're going to add the details in here later. You're going to add the goals. You're going to think through those sorts of things later. And we're going to talk about that in that planning workshop. That's what we're going to spend most of our time doing, honestly, is kind of thinking through those sorts of things. But you now have, those three lists of that you have to build out your schedule. Now, let me tell you how I think the best way to manage this sort of yearly planning schedule is. No secret here. The answer is going to be Trello, of course. I love Trello for this sort of thing. This is the perfect reason to use Trello. If you don't use Trello whatsoever at all, this is the thing I think you should be using it for. It's a great gateway into Trello. But this is why. So David Allen, who wrote the book Getting Things Done, is kind of the first big productivity book that got so many people going. And David Allen had a system that he called it his folder system that was part of it. Then a guy named Merlin Mann later on developed a website called 43 Folders that was about an implementation of this. And this is what David Allen did. David Allen had 43 folders. He had, there's a folder for every single month. And then he had a folder for each day of the month. And he would sort things in that particular capacity. And when he got done with his month, he would move every single thing he had done that month into the folder for that month to save for the next year. Because here's the thing. It might be a lot of work to build out a schedule, a yearly planning schedule like this. But when you use Trello for it, you can save all sorts of things. You can use the attachment function and have files in there, have docs, have images. You can build in checklists, all this sort of thing. And say this is a recurring thing your church does. You put in the work to plan it out really, really well this first time. And next year, you just make sure you go back in and you just refine the things that you have done already. You reactivate those checklists. Every year you use this strategy, it actually gets easier and easier. And so the easy way to do this, I'm going to tell you this really quick right now. If you're interested in this, come to that workshop and we'll walk through all this in an even deeper mode. But I want you to go to Trello, get a Trello account, start up a workspace, and then I want you to create a board that's your yearly planning board. Now, the first list I want you to make is a key. Now, these keys are highly adaptable, but I found these keys to be really important. If you are doing your whole church's everything inside of one board, you need to be using a key. Now, in the Trello course, I talk about how we use this strategy for both worship and sermon preparation and planning, and also yearly ministry planning. You might be the kind of person that you keep your own personal stuff in here as well. This is entirely a private planning thing, and then you need to have some stuff there. But just go in there, attach some colors to each one of these boards. It makes it easier to use, and each one of those cards, that's it. So then I want you to create 12 lists, a list for every single month of the year, January, February, March, April, all those sorts of things, and create that out there. I love this because it's flexible. You can think through things and you can move things around. And so there you have this Trello board now built out for you. And here's where you're going to start dropping things in. And what that means is you're going to create a specific card for each thing. And I want you to drop them in this order. The first thing is I want you to drop in and create cards for the time off you want to take. Just go ahead and notate that in there. So that's at the very front end of things, especially if one of your goals, if one of your specific outcomes was for your year to be less hectic and less chaotic. This is the first thing you need to do. Just trust me. Okay. The second thing drop in those those church notes. They get their own card. So go ahead and create a card for Easter Sunday. Create a card for Mother's Day. Create a card for Father's Day. All of those sorts of things. I like to title the card with what it is and then what the date will be. And I sort each one of these cards in descending order in my lists. That's how I put it together. And then I want you to go through and think through everything in the want, in the need, and the have to do's. Now, this might be a place where you can take advantage of your key and do that. But here's where you have to be strategic, because at this point in time, your calendar is already probably going to start getting pretty full. And there's also a lot of things on this list that might take more than 1 month to do. And so what I would encourage you to do is to drop that card in there when you have to start thinking about it. And if there's a specific day attached to the end of it, that day needs its own card and its own month as well. So let's just say you have to do a capital campaign this year, and your commitment Sunday is going to be the fourth Sunday in September, and you're launching the capital campaign the second Sunday in September. Well, both of those Sundays need cards inside of your September list, but you probably need to start thinking about this capital campaign in February or March. That's where your big card needs to go. That's where the big card that you're going to do a lot of work inside of needs to go, is in that February or March time. So for long range projects, that's what I like to recommend, is that you have a big, huge, massive card when you have to start thinking about it. And then you have secondary cards that are sitting there on the days where things are due or the days when things are done. But you're probably getting squeezed by now. You're probably saying, wow, Chad, there's so many things that are going on here. I'm going to have to start prioritizing. If you're going to start prioritizing at that point, that's when I like to use a tool that's called the Eisenhower Matrix. And it's a really quick way of just sifting and sorting ideas of, when do I need to do this? Do I need to delegate this? Do I need to delay this? It's a way of understanding what progress looks like. Quote from Dwight Eisenhower: "In preparing for battle, I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable." Thanks, President Eisenhower. But it's a quick quadrant. I'll have a diagram of this in the show notes, or you can just Google Eisenhower Matrix. But essentially what you have is you have 4 quadrants. Across the top, you put urgent and not urgent, and going down, you have important, not important. The things in quadrant 1 are going to be urgent and important. This is where you have to prioritize. Quadrant 2, that's not urgent but important. Schedule the time to think through these. Quadrant 3 is urgent but not important. This kind of stuff is just busy work. I like to think through this. If nothing bad would happen if you didn't do it, you might just need to ask yourself the question, do I really need to be doing this? This is where it matters, because some of the want to do things can easily fall into this. And I like to use what I call the Jurassic Park principle here. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. If this is this thing that you always thought would just be cool or fun to do, but you can't attach any missional goals to it or talk about the ways that it might change things, maybe it's on that want to do list, but it just shouldn't take scheduled prioritization over something that's in the need or the have to. And then quadrant 4, not urgent and not important. If you have something on your list that you feel falls into quadrant 4, then you probably need to have some larger thought process about what's going on. But inside of this filtering, this is where things begin to matter, because if you have a bunch of lists, and the last time I did this, I had, I think, 30-something things in one of these 3 lists. I had to begin thinking through what I actually had the capability and the capacity to do in order to schedule this, and what deserved to be on my yearly planning schedule and what didn't. I'll be honest with you, y'all, I'm going to be doing this stuff for myself over the next couple of days. I'm a little frightened to how things might filter out, but that's how you start dropping those things in. Now, once you walk out of there, you should be looking at a Trello board that has a pretty decent yearly plan on it. Now, it's not going to be frozen. It's not going to be done. Remember, this whole strategy is designed to be adaptable, but you now have a visual look at what your year could look like. And now we come to that third part of the mental model. Remember, there's specific outcome plus tangible action equals transformation. Now let's think through this transformation. This is the way that we can begin sorting things or making decisions. Do you feel like this calendar is designing the year that you need to have? Not the method, because some of you might just pull out a big, huge piece of paper, or you might want to get on a whiteboard and do this, or you might want to have a bunch of Post-it notes and do it. Trello is just a digital version of all of that. But if you're looking at this, is this schedule going to give you the specific outcome that you have? It's going to give you the year that you need to have. If not, what are the changes that you need to make? Because you get the whole thing at a glance now. What are some stuff you might need to add to it in order to do things? There might be some times you need to take things away in order to do it. But now you have the ability to adapt to go even deeper into your goals. That is why I absolutely love this style of yearly planning and why I think Trello is the best way to do it. So if you're interested in knowing more about this, a couple of ways you can do that. Number one, I encourage you, come hang out in that workshop with us online. It's going to be on Zoom. We're going to talk through specifically kind of going deep into the planning side of these larger projects. And then we're also going to talk about the sifting. It's just going to have to happen because that's the two places that we tend to get hung up. And there's a lot of beauty in having a bunch of people there to do that with. And so we're going to get together, do big group stuff, then also do some small group, breakout group work as far as that's concerned. So just head over to the show notes, revchadbrooks.com/PPP/082 to sign up for that. The second thing is the Trello course and the Becoming Productive course. Just ran a Black Friday sale on all those, but they're not that expensive anyway, especially if you look at how much other folks are selling big courses like this for. But those will both give you two tools to really hone in on your personal productivity. If you getting your productivity and your ministry productivity under control is a 2024 goal, fantastic stuff right there. The last thing is this. Some people come to the point they realize, Chad, I need coaching in this. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching with pastors. I also am growing to do more and more group development with church leadership teams, specifically about planning, about ministry goals, and about intentional invitation. If that's curious to you, if coaching or the development work is curious to you, go to the show notes. There's a link to Coaching with Chad, Work with Chad. You can get a free 30-minute exploratory phone call, and we can talk about what that might look like. I love to help normal-sized churches be their best. But that's it, friends. Episode 82 is over. I hope you're having a fantastic week. Y'all, Advent officially starts this Sunday. I know some of y'all jumped the gun and went a week early. I was tempted to. I was so tempted to personally, but I decided not to do it. But I will see y'all back in the next episode, episode 83. Until then, just hang out online. Come hang out in the Productive Pastor community on Facebook. And we'll see you back in the next episode.